Tell me about yourself. Where were you born and raised?
I was born in Snoqualmie, Washington. I always had a parent in Los Angeles and up here, though, so I always went back and forth. Spent a lot of time in the Snoqualmie Valley, too. Yeah, that's about it for being born and raised. My dad was an Anaheim Hells Angel. That's why I was down in Los Angeles a lot, in Anaheim and stuff. And,
Anaheim, California.
Yeah. And, yeah, but my story gets kind of weird. At age 17, I caught my mom's boyfriend molesting my 7-year-old sister. And so I pulled her out of the room and I ran downstairs to the basement of the house. And this was in Snoqualmie, Washington. And I called my mom, who was a bartender. And the police got called and everything. And he went through the courts. And by the time he went through the courts, I was 18. And he got given 6 months in county jail. He got 2. You're interrupting the whole interview thing. People just come up and think that what they got to say is more important than anything else going on. And but yeah, he got 6 months in the county jail for molesting a 7-year-old girl, and they knocked 2 off for a good time. He did 1 in the actual jail and 3 in the work release, and had a year of probation. And I thought that was unacceptable. So
because it is.
Yeah, and I went to his apartment in Seattle at this point, and we got in a fight, and I ended up ultimately super gluing his face to the floor and stomping him to death. And I called the police on myself, and I waited an hour and a half and called them again, and they hadn't shown up yet because they thought I was joking after the first call. And they showed up within 10 minutes of the second call. And they kept me on scene for hours, and the detective finally showed up, and he asked me what my intention was, and I didn't know any better. I'd never been in trouble before, and also I didn't know one confession was worse than another, and I wasn't proud of what I did, but I wasn't ashamed of it by any means either, and I told him my intention was I set out to beat that man to death, and that's what I did. And that shows premeditation, so they went with aggravated murder.
You're 18, you said?
Yeah, and that's what they got. And there's only two punishments they can give you for aggravated murder, and that's the death penalty or life without the possibility of parole. And the death penalty, before you're even arraigned, it requires them to have this special hearing to see if they're even going to go after it or not. And they didn't even have that hearing in my case. They never even contemplated the death penalty. But it's weird that they don't have that hearing for the life sentence also, because it is a death penalty, in most cases. Yeah, so I get aggravated murder, life without the possibility of parole, and I do 16 years. I'd end up ultimately doing a total of 19 years flat in prison, minus the fact that I got out for escaping twice. And at year 16, the Board of Governors came to me, and which is rare. They don't usually look at people's cases or anything that less than 1% of 1% or something like that gets clemency.
Because they had the information of who this person was.
Right.
They knew the connection.
Correct.
So someone looked at something.
Right, and they said, we think the prosecution and detective is predatory in your case, and you should have been given a manslaughter. And while we can't restructure your charges or your sentencing, they can do whatever they want. They just don't like to, And they said, we can strongly recommend you apply for clemency. And it took another 3 years to get me out. And I was never going to apply for clemency on my own, because they don't like giving it to you when you're an angel. Like I said, less than 1% of 1% gets it. And and I was not an angel. I was a disciplinary nightmare. I went in with 1 felony. I left with 14.
Two questions. Mm-hmm. Remind us or define clemency. I don't know what that is.
Clemency is where you go before these 5 people called the Board of Governors.
Okay.
And they're the eyes and ears of the governor, basically. And you pitch your case on why you should be given a second chance at life. It's kind of like parole, except for parole, you have the right to go before a parole board. Clemency, the Board of Governors, you don't have the right to go before them. You have to get permission to go before them, basically. You know what I mean? Like,
and so someone granted you clemency. Right. That's that term. Gotcha.
And then so they make the recommendation and pass it to the governor, who at the time was Christine Gregoire. And I don't even know if she actually looks at anything besides their recommendation. You know what I mean? But yeah, I was granted clemency. And then after I got out of prison, I enrolled in Seattle Central. I dropped out in 8th grade, by the way. And my name's Taco because when I dropped out in 8th grade, it was the 80s, and I was living in North Hollywood. And the only thing to do in the daytime really was go to the video arcades. And upstairs in a bunch of them, they had pool tables pool halls, and they'd rent the tables out by the hour. And I'd go up there, and the only other people to play pool with were these older kids. They were all Serranos. They were Mexicans, And after the first day, they'd laugh at me and point at me and call me Taco when I first came in. But we still got along well, and we still played pool and stuff. And I couldn't figure out why they called me Taco. So I asked my dad, you know why they call me Taco? And we brainstormed, like, are they calling you a pussy? Are they saying you fold easy? Like, what are they doing, you know? And so I go back in there trying to sound tough, but I had to sound terrified little kid. I thought we were friends. I thought we got along. Like, why are you calling me Taco? And they start laughing even harder. And they're like, no, dummy, we're not calling you Taco. We're pointing to the pool sticks behind you when you come up the stairs saying, grab your taco. That's how you say pool stick in Spanish, stupid. And then once my dad learned that, there was no not calling me Taco. So I've been Taco since I was like 13 years old. But after so while I was in prison, after my second escape, I was in the county jail awaiting to get sentenced for that escape.
Well, and I got to put a pause there, man. Tell us about this escape. I've never, you said twice.
Twice.
Are you open to talking about?
Sure. So the first escape was, I got escape in the first degree, and it's, actually I got escape in second degree for the first escape.
There's degrees of escapes. I don't even know.
There's first and second degree, and a lot of crimes, they always have to define the crime, you know, to make it clear that you broke that law, you know what I mean? And so they don't incarcerate you for the wrong thing or whatever. And so escape from the first and second degree are unusual because they both say they have the exact same definition, and that definition is where he or she left his or her place of confinement without permission.
Gotcha.
And I argue there used to be a law that was called the willful failure to return to work release facility, and they threw that law out. And all they have now is escape 1, escape 2, and then they have escape from community custody, which has always been used for people absconding from probation, because that's community custody. But when you're in a work release facility, or when you're granted a furlough, or when you go on like an armed escort, in my case, to a funeral, you sign these papers that say you will now be in the custody of the community.
Right.
And so I argued that I should be given that crime, because what I did was I had an armed escort to a funeral, and I had somebody on the outside already meet me in the bathroom, just like in the movies, you know what I mean, and have clothes set inside the toilet tank for me, and the toilet tank emptied of water and stuff.
Because you were in like a jumpsuit kind of thing?
Right, yeah, and I went out the windows and got in their car, and off we went, you know. And I made it 30 days exactly, because both my escapes, I made it exactly 30 days on the first one and exactly 90 days on the second one. And the second escape was, I was at a camp. I was out in the middle of the Hoh National Rainforest out by Forks here in Washington. And my counselor came to me on Wednesdays. On Wednesday nights, there's one of the counselors always works till 7 p.m. And it was my counselor's turn. He worked till 7, and he came to me and he called me Big Head, because they had to special order a helmet, a hard hat that would fit me for being a sawyer and a firefighter. And he goes, well, Big Head, we got to take you back to prison tomorrow and put you in the hole. I was like, why? He goes, you had a warrant come up. And I knew exactly what he was talking about. And by this point, I already had a release date. And the warrant was from the previous escape, crimes I committed while on escape. And I knew I was looking at like 245 months. And I couldn't face that after I finally had gotten a release date, you know what I mean? Like that kind of news. And he told me 3 times in the next like 4 minutes, he's like, it's too late to take you back tonight, so we'll take you back in the morning. It's too late to take you back tonight, so we'll take you in the morning. It seemed like he was telling me, get the fuck out of here, you know what I mean? And so I went back to my unit, and I put on 2 pairs of underwear, 2 pairs of long johns, 2 pairs of thermal tops.
I'm assuming it was cold outside.
Yeah, it's middle of February.
Oh yeah,
and it's just like on top of like Snoqualmie Pass, you got like 15 feet of snowpack and stuff, you know, and where you're up in the mountains in the Hoh National Rainforest, and so it was very cold, and so I dressed in 2 of everything we had, and then put my Nomex on over it, which is your firefighting gear and stuff, you know, and I had 1 shot at looking at a compass before I left, so I'm trying to shoot for Port Angeles. And I'm going to go cross country through the woods in February. Wasn't all that well planned out, you know, it's spur of the moment decision. And I tried to line up as many points of interest as I could with the compass, you know what I mean? That way, when I go off track, I can line them up exactly right in my memory, and maybe I'll hit it. But if you're off even by like 2 degrees, if you go 20 miles, you're off by 40 miles at the end of it, right? Like, so I did pretty good. I got within 35 to 40 miles of my destination. But it took me 3 nights and 4 days to get there, and it was so dark so early each night that I actually cried. It was so scary, I cried each night.
And you're just walking by yourself in the woods?
Yeah, through the woods.
Oh my.
Not even sure if I'm going to make it to the road, or, you know what I mean? I had no clue what was going on. And because you can't just walk in a straight line, you know, there's ravines and gullies and rocks and bushes that you can't get through, or you know what I mean. It's ridiculous. Sometimes it seems like bushes you can't get around, and yeah. So ultimately, I ended up getting caught, and on the second escape, I ended up getting while I was out, I ended up selling enough weed and stuff to fucking get a private attorney. It wasn't the best one, but it was a private attorney, and I ended up beating the original charges I had the warrants for, and then I took 59 months for the escape itself. And for the first escape, when I got caught, I wanted to take it all the way to jury trial because they charged me with escape in the first degree, and both escapes, like a burglary, it says like where you entered a dwelling or building attached to or within 10 feet to it of, you know, it's got all this legal jargon that's hard to decipher, you know what I mean? You got to have an attorney to help you. But with escape 1 and escape 2, it's cut and dry. Like I said, it's where he or she left his or her place of confinement without permission. And I didn't do that on the first escape. I left with permission. And I argued that I was guilty of escape from community custody, and that since that's not what they filed on me, that I want to take it to trial. But I had an attorney with a conscience apparently, and it's like a unicorn. And she said, "Well, you can't do that." And I was like, "Why?" She goes, "Because you're guilty." I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm not guilty of that." And she said, "But you're guilty of something." I'm like, "So what? So if I kill somebody and they try to tell me I'm a rapist, like I should take the rape charge? Like that makes no sense whatsoever." You know what I mean? And she just would not budge. And so I asked the judge for a change of attorney, and they denied me and said that since I hadn't signed my speedy trial waivers away for the prosecutor, that he wasn't going to grant me a continuance to get a new attorney. And so I stuck with her. So I took a deal for 89 months on that.
On top, like?
Yeah, on top of the other sentence, yeah. And my custodial assaults that I caught while inside, that was in California. There's a lot more expected out of you as a lifer than there from the other inmates than there is up here.
Well, let's see. You were in prison in California.
I should have clarified earlier. I fell as a Washington State inmate. That's where I started out my time at. But my family paid for a hardship so I could have an interstate compact and go down to California because I had a family member dying down there.
Okay, gotcha.
And so I did about half my time down there in Corcoran and Tehachapi. And up here I started out in Walla Walla. Then I went to McNeil in '95 when they opened up the new blocks. And then I went back to Walla Walla. And then I went to Monroe, and then down to Corcoran and Tehachapi in California.
And talk about you were 18.
Yeah.
And you got out how many years?
I did 19. I went in 2 days before I turned 19. I got out the day before I turned 38.
That is like all your 20s, all your 30s, more or less.
Yeah, it was exactly 1 day longer than half my life. But the first half of your life, you don't remember half of that. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And my guess is, you said you hadn't been in trouble before. You had to really learn.
Yeah,
shit ton.
And my dad's people, the Hells Angels, they threw fundraisers for me and stuff. And any community that they live in, the people love them. You know, the people really like them, and they basically throw their money at them and stuff. So they paid for my attorney, they paid for my hardship, they paid for all that stuff. You know, they paid for my bail. And in Washington State, when you get found guilty, they revoke your bail and make you repost it. And it's no big deal if you posted cash bail because you get that money back because you didn't do anything wrong, you know, so they give you the money back, you just repost it and you're good to go. But when you're on a bond for over $1 million, the bondsman keeps that money, you know what I mean? And so you have to post it again. So if it wasn't for them, I would have been screwed. But what that did do, it was a blessing, but it was also kind of a curse because I committed my crime. I was in jail till I went to the court and they gave me a bail and I bailed out. And then when I got found guilty, I reposted that bail, and then at sentencing, they gave me 2 weeks to turn myself in. But for a life sentence when you're 18 years old, like I got dropped off at the jail probably a dozen times, said my goodbyes and hugged and cried and everything. And then 2 hours later, I was back at home knocking on the door. Like, you know what I mean? Like I just couldn't bring myself to go through there. And the U.S. Marshals caught me and took me to prison. And when I got to prison, it was a Sunday, Halloween, 1993. And I called the methadone clinic, THS, the next day because I was on 160 milligrams of methadone due to a back injury, and from my family doctor prescribed me that. And if you were on methadone, now lots of places come and dose people at King County Jail, but at the time it was only THS, and so wherever you got your methadone from, they had to verify it with THS, and then THS would come down and dose you. And so I called them Monday morning, and they said, "Yeah, your doctor already called us. We already got everything verified. We'll come down tomorrow and dose you," which would be Tuesday, my 19th birthday. And So I get woken up on my 19th birthday by a bunch of guys in the cell, shaking me and saying, look, look, look. And I thought it was the methadone lady, but they're pointing at the TV. And this was before Washington's Most Wanted, and what they had was Western Washington's Most Wanted back then. And it was a 30-second Crime Stoppers commercial, showed two people, and I was one of the people, and I also got the sound effects, the iron door slamming shut and the red stamp across my face, captured, you know what I mean? And that was the first thing I saw on my 19th birthday, and then I'm getting woken up again. I'm thinking it's for my methadone again, and instead it's the cop, the corrections officer waking me up. He's like, roll it up for release. And I'm like, I'm not getting released. He goes, roll it up for release. I said, I'm not getting released. He goes, you're McMonagle, aren't you? I said, yeah, but I'm not getting released. He goes, you're getting released to DOC. And I was like, oh my goodness, when you get sentenced, usually get sentenced typically on a Friday, and then the next chain day, Tuesday, they send you off to prison. Well, I'd already been sentenced and everything, so there's no reason to keep me in county jail. So the first chain day was Tuesday. They sent me off to prison. So I'd been in county jail 2 days of my life before I was going to prison on a life sentence,
Yeah.
And that also meant I was going from 160 milligrams of methadone to nothing overnight.
Oh, so they don't give you anything?
They don't give you anything in prison, nothing.
Wow.
And yes, that was a miserable experience all on its own. But yeah, we can talk about drugs some other time. Back to the my release. So when I finally get released,
And what year is this you get released?
19 years being released.
What year?
Oh, that was 2012, November 1st, 2012.
That's when you
I
got
went in
released.
Halloween 1993, and I got out November 1st, 2012.
Yeah.
And
the world's a different place, man.
completely different place. And yeah, also while I was in, I didn't ask for anything from my family while I was in. Washington takes 75% of all monies you have sent in, unless you owe child support, then they take 95% of all money you have sent in. And you can have $10 put on your books and spend on commissary, and they'll consider you indigent. They won't take any part of that $10, but you have to spend that before you have another 10 sent in. Otherwise, they'll take 75% of the second 10.
Wow.
And I asked for that $10 maybe 3 dozen times, and I got it probably 6 dozen times, And I asked for a quarterly food package, I think twice, and got it maybe both times. I think I only got it once though. And I asked for two clothing packages, got them both. And I asked for, I think 3 Christmas packages, and I got one of those and 5 ones I didn't ask for, you know what I mean, throughout the time. And then I never even asked for a visit until I was 6 months short, until I'd already had a release or it was 6 months short. And then I asked my mom to come visit me, and I had her come visit me one time a month for 2 months, then every other week for 2 months, and the last 2 months I had her visit every week. And yes, because I tried to, and even the phone, like my mom put lots and lots of money on the phone for me, but anytime they switch companies or whatever, they jack your money from it, and you have to put new deposits down and everything. And every time they did that, I always came up with the initial money to set up the account and stuff, because I tried to.
So when you got out, like where'd you go? What'd you do?
One more thing about it inside, forgive me, because it ties into with what I did immediately after getting out.
Gotcha.
While inside for the escape, I'm back in the county jail waiting to get punished. And my friend Chris Burke was teaching there through Ameritrade, and he was about to move to Chicago to get his doctorate in poli-sci from Chicago University, same place Barack Obama got his. And I learned that in Shelton, they had just changed, DOC had changed the rules to where you had to have your GED before you left Shelton, even if you were just in transit, and that you had to take these predictor classes and tests and stuff, And I did not want to be stuck in Shelton. And so I asked him, I said, hey man, you got to get me in for the GED testing. And he said, well, when do you go back? And when you're getting sentenced, the next Tuesday you're going to leave. So I knew that I had three and a half weeks left. And it's, he goes, well, we only do testing on Wednesdays, and we do one test each Wednesday, and they're timed tests. So if I could get you in, which I'm not even sure, you'd have to do 2 tests in the same amount of time everybody else is doing one. And so I said, I don't care, please sign it up. And, I forget how old I was. I think I was 36 at the time and hadn't been in a classroom since 8th grade. And I had no study materials, no predictor tests or whatever.
Wow.
And I did that. So I took 2 tests on one Wednesday, 2 tests the next Wednesday. And on the last Wednesday, I was finally able to take in the same amount of time as everybody else. And I missed one question on the whole GED. I finished in top 1 percentile in the nation.
So you passed.
Yeah. And so when I got out, I went right back to drugs for the first 3 months. And I didn't know, I had 0 life skills. I had no tools under my belt to survive out here. You know what I mean? And
so you got out in Washington.
Yeah, I got released from Monroe, Washington State
And just kind of stayed in Monroe area.
No, I went to Seattle.
Okay.
And before I got out, I tried to do all kinds of things. I was writing Seattle Central College like every day, asking to enroll. I applied for my FAFSA and was granted for it before I got out, which I later learned was against the law. Didn't know. And I wrote Pioneer Housing every single day until I was going to get a response from them, and saying, hey, I want to get into one of your guys' transitional housing apartments. I've never been on a lease in my life. I just did this much time, and I'm scared to death to go to a clean and sober house. I've heard nothing but nightmare stories about even people just stealing food and shit would send me through the roof. I just did 19 years in prison where you handle that an entirely different way than is acceptable on the street. You know what I mean? And finally, they sent me a letter and said they'd have an apartment ready for me, but they wouldn't have it ready on my release date, which was Halloween. And so I had to stay one day later because you can't get released without a release address. And so I stayed the extra day till November 1st, got released to my own apartment. And when my case manager there met me, he goes, oh, you're McMonigal. He goes, Jesus Christ, I've never gotten so many letters from someone in my life. And but it worked out as I didn't know what to do. I went right to drugs for the first 3 months and got caught during probation, and I only did 3 days in jail for that, but it woke me up, and I'd gone to a couple of AA meetings and listened to, trying to half-ass the probation deal, And one of the things I heard was the 12 promises that they said, and one of those promises was half measures availed us nothing. And for some reason that really registered with me. It wasn't half measures avail us half the rewards, or it was half measures avail us nothing. And so I decided, well, if I want to get on, and I thought about everyone I knew who tried to half-ass probation. None of them succeeded, So I jumped in feet first, and I quit doing drugs. I figured I'd give it a year, and I gave him 13 months and completed probation successfully, got off that. And July 3rd, it'll be exactly 10 years since I've been off probation. And so that was a good success story, And during that year, I was walking by Seattle Central because it was like 3 blocks from my house, and I was walking with my friend who was a former cellmate, did most of my tattoos. And I was like, let's try to enroll in college. And he goes, you serious? I said, yeah, you've been talking about it, let's try to enroll. So we go in there, and we learned that we have to take the Compass test, and it's $35, and it's basically like the GED predictor test, I guess. And it's like placement testing. And so I had $70 on me, so I paid for his and my Compass test. And they said, now don't worry, you're probably gonna have to do math 89 and English 87 or something like that before you can take a full caseload and all that, or class load. And but I passed to where I could go right into full class load. And so I enrolled in their bachelor's program for social and human science. And the goal was to get my bachelor's and then go to the UW and get my master's. And because UW's consistently the #2 school in the nation for social work. And that first quarter, I got in a screaming match with one of my professors, who incidentally is the head of the master's program at UW for social work. And I ended up thinking I wasn't understanding a lot of lessons in some other classes and stuff, and I ended up skipping 2 midterms and skipped a bunch of classes, and ultimately I ended up with a 3.2 grade point average. And I was like, holy crap. So I decided to reapply myself, and I ended up with a 4.0 every quarter after that. And I got within 3 quarters of graduating, and my stepmother died. And I took that pretty hard, and so I took a quarter off from school, and and it just kind of snowballed into a second quarter, and then I ended up making nationwide news for getting kidnapped, tortured, and beaten by a multimillionaire here in Seattle.
Whoa, we gotta.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Yeah. So, on Father's Day 2015, me and my then girlfriend, this girl named Trish, we had a condo at Queen Anne and Republican, and we had just bought a brand new 2015 Lexus IS 250 F Sport, and I'm pulling out of our parking garage, and this multimillionaire and his 3 accomplices, they pull me out of the car. And when I say multimillionaire, I mean worth $80 to $120 million. He owns restaurants here, LA, Frisco, and a couple of apartment buildings, and car lots up here.
And did you ever know this person beforehand?
Yeah, I'll tell you the why of this is kind of the punchline of the whole story. And so they pull me out of the car, and they break 2 of my ribs at my spine and puncture my lung. Oh, ice. And And I climb back to my feet, and I can send you the links to the news stories. I can show you personally, but for anyone who's watching or gives a shit, I can give you links to find the news stories and the pictures and stuff. They break 2 of my ribs in my spine, puncture my lungs. And I climb back to my feet, and I fought 4-armed men on video for more than 20 minutes. And when the police reviewed the video, they said I was tased and pistol whipped over 50 times each in my head and face during that 20 minutes. And they finally got me down, or they finally kept me down, rather. And they zip tied me 3 times around my wrists, 3 times around my knees, 3 times around my ankles, and threw me in the back of the Lexus and took off with me. And from our condo at Queen Anne Republican to Denny and Aurora, there is 6 traffic lights, and we had to stop at each one twice due to all the traffic and stuff. And all 12 times we stopped, I'd fight the passenger gun with my hand, but one hand goes, they both go because I'm bound, I'd fight Scott, the millionaire's gun, with my head. And the Mexican kid next to me, I just let him put the taser in the pistol whip gashes and zap me with it. And all 12 times I fought, I got the door open, banged in the cars next to us, screamed for help. No one called 911. And then from Denny, Aurora to Canlis there at the Aurora Bridge, they threw me out of the moving vehicle twice, backed up and got me. And come on, DH, you see us talking on camera and stuff, and you're going to put that right down in front of us. Thank you, buddy, but I don't need it. And they threw me out of the moving vehicle between Denny and Aurora and the Aurora Bridge twice. Backed them, got me. No one called 911.
I apologize. I didn't see the camera and the microphone.
That's okay.
So instead of just going on, he's got to loudly interject and apologize. That's great. And still no one called 911. Then the whole ordeal took 5.5 hours is all. But they spent the last 2.5 hours at 40th and Pasadena in the basement of this apartment building that he owns. And they spent waterboarding me, torturing me, hitting the face, shotgun butt, stomping on my balls and stuff like that. And they realized that they beat me too bad to let me go, that they got to kill me. And they're actually weeping. They're crying with the thoughts of the repercussions if they get caught, And they're also arguing. The millionaire wants to stick to the original plan, which was to take me up to their prearranged dump site and shoot me up there. And the other 3 were like, you see what a nightmare he was getting here? Like, we're killing him here. And I'm actually with them because I don't want to be shot in the woods, at least when my kids and my mom know I'm dead and stuff, And while also in prison, I conceived 4 children, 4 daughters with my wife. And so I'm thinking maybe if I get shot in the city, maybe a miracle can happen if somebody hears a gunshot. I don't want to get shot in the woods. You know what I mean? And so I'm not going to get in that car without getting shot. And so I figure I got enough energy to make one more half-ass attempt at getting free, but I don't know when to do it if I stay in Seattle, if they're going to shoot me here, and because I don't think I can make it out of the basement alive. But if I agree to go to the woods and I don't succeed, then I'm getting shot in the woods, And I just start talking shit. I start telling them like, hey, you guys might be killing me, but you're doing this because you're cowards, not killers. Remember, for the rest of your life, you did this shit because you're afraid. And I start making fun of him. He's Korean, so I start making fun of him for having the Glock 19 because they call it the girl's gun because it's got smaller grips. I'm like, why you got the girl's gun, Scott? Is it your little tiny hands?
What was the thought?
Just to emasculate him, you know what I mean?
But why? To stall or something?
No, just to piss them off. Hopefully they'd make some kind of mistake and I could get one of their guns. Because I believe I could have won the fight in the parking garage, but that'll have to come, so I don't spoil the kind of punchline of the thing. That'll have to come at the end of the thing. And so I'm going to try to recreate a scenario where I can disarm one of them at least,
Gotcha.
And I kind of get my wish. I piss them off to the point where they put me on my knees, they put a bag over my head and a gun to my head, and it's the last seconds of my life, and his phone rings just like out of some shitty movie. I still haven't figured out what he could have possibly thought was more pressing than the matters at hand, But he goes outside, presumably so I couldn't yell in the background. And he comes back in a few minutes later, he's like, cut him loose, get the bag off his head. And they go, you mean just his feet so we can transport him? He's like, no, cut his hands free, get the fucking bag off his head. And he's freaking out, and once I'm standing up and I can see he's holding his phone out toward me, screen first, but he's crouched down like this behind it, and the screen's black, and I'm thinking he went completely around the bend, you know what I mean? Like, kidnapping's already fairly symptomatic of that in the first place, but he goes, Taco, I need you to get back in the car with me. I said, fuck no. He goes, Taco, I need you to trust, and I said, fuck no, I don't care what he's gonna say, I've been trusting this dude. And he goes, I got a Seattle police officer on the phone, and the phone lights up, and this lady goes, actually, I'm a Seattle police sergeant, I'm Sergeant Lyons out of East Precinct. She goes, where are you, Chris? Because my real name's Chris McMonagle. And I said, I don't know. And she goes, well, we can't figure it out because we called him, and he won't tell us, but he said he'll drive you to us. And so I think about it for a few seconds, and I ultimately agree. We got to get his attention because he's in complete histrionics. He's absolutely hysterical with panic, and he's talking in a high-pitched, squeaky voice, talking all fast. Just tell him I did everything. Put everything on me. Just tell him I did everything. And he's not slowing down at all. And I finally get his attention. He's like, "You'll go? You'll go?" I said, "Yeah, man, I'll go." And I hand him back his phone, and we start walking the car, just me and him. And he throws me the keys, which I caught, but I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Look at me. I can't drive, you know?" So I throw him the keys back, and we get in the car. And a weird thing about my memory, for some reason, from this point on in my memory, I remember my car as a convertible, like it had no roof, but it was not a convertible, just odd side fact. So we start driving, and he's freaking out to me the same way, just high-pitched, squeaky voice, and it was making me dizzy. He was talking so fast and so loud and shrill, and I just tried to tune him out. And so I started naming out the street signs: 40th in Pasadena, 40th in Stone, 40th in Fremont. And the Sergeant Lyons is like, good job, keep going, keep going. And as we're getting on the Fremont drawbridge, I look at him, I said, "Scott, man, if you keep freaking out, you're gonna make me pass out, you know? Or if you keep freaking out like a little girl, no offense to little girls, you're gonna make me pass out." And he takes me literally, and he pulls over on the shoulder, but not our shoulder. He goes careening across all the lanes of traffic on the Fremont drawbridge at rush hour and parks on the oncoming shoulder, which is only like 4 inches wide because the pedestrians walk on the other side of the guardrail there, you know? And he runs around to my side, opens the door, drops to his knees, and starts begging me, "Taco, stay with me, Taco." And I noticed some weird's going on, you know. I noticed we're the only vehicle on the Fremont drawbridge at rush hour on Father's Day. That's never going to happen again in my lifetime, you know what I mean? It's because they knew we were trying to go to East Precinct to get to Sergeant Lyons, and I'm naming out the street signs, so they knew we were going to have to get on the drawbridge. And the person that called the police originally and said I was kidnapped was a relative of his, and said he used terms like tactical strike team and base of operations. So they thought that he was maybe military trained or something. There was a high potential for a shootout, and they wanted to minimize potential collateral damage. So instead of letting it go down in the city, they wanted to trap us on the bridge. And the original idea was once we got on the bridge, they were going to box everybody in, and there'd be potential collateral damage on the bridge to other people, but a lot less than if it happened in the city, you know. But because of the way he goes careening across the lanes of traffic, the powers that be were smart enough to only stop cars from getting on both sides, and nobody else knows anything weird's going on. They go about their business, drive off the bridge, and once we were on the bridge, they sealed off both ends with 4 fire trucks, opened the drawbridge with us on it, had 15 boats come out with red and blue lights on it and stuff, you know, in case they threw me the drink. And they had cops from all over King and Snohomish County because they've been looking for me for 5.5 hours to arrest him. And I walked myself to the closest fire truck, and I started to lay down on the big front bumper, and they're like, no, we need 2 blood pressures. Well, I'm like, can't you get one sitting up and one laying down? And they said, yeah, we can. And so I ended up having a blood pressure 60/30, 2 broken eye sockets, a broken nose, a fractured forehead. They took a plaster cast of to match to a shotgun butt, 57 staples in my head, 13 staples in my ribs, 2 broken ribs, and a punctured lung. And I spent 4 days in the Harborview ER downstairs in the fucking ER. And when they stabilized me and wanted to send me to the ICU, I refused medical services and went home. And like I said, I'll provide links to that for you and stuff so people can check it out and the news story and stuff. And now the why of the whole thing was because my girlfriend was his wife. And but I wasn't trying to be a homewrecker. She was friends with my roommate Natalie, and I was talking to her one night, you know, and she told me about her relationship, and her husband was her best friend for over a decade, and he was 10 years older than her. He came to her and he said, "Look, we're both of an age where we don't believe in love anymore." He goes, "As Koreans, we get paid at our marriage, we get paid at our reception. We've been best friends for over a decade, and we're both business owners. It just makes good fiscal sense." And so she said, "Okay." And he goes, "But you got to go somewhere else for sex. I can't give that to you." 18 months of marriage, they had sex twice. He didn't finish either time, so it caused him discomfort, whatever. So she stepped out of a relationship, had sex with me. We caught feelings, went and told him, and he freaked out for like an hour and then totally rationalized stuff out and said shit that was true and made sense. He's like, "I don't know what I was thinking. Marrying my best friend is doomed for failure. If there is no sex, there is no relationship, you know, da-da-da." And said he's bound out gracefully, gave us the condo when we bought the Lexus, put his name on it so we get better financing and stuff. And give me $100, take her out to eat a couple times, you know. It was just hella cool, you know what I mean? And the whole time he was plotting. So on Father's Day morning, we heard a key in the doorknob, and so he's the only one with a key, and he does own a gun. So just in case he's getting squirrely, I rush the door, you know. As he comes through, I start fast talking him, patting him down, like, you should have called for Scott. You should have at least knocked. You shouldn't even have a key. I thought you bowed out gracefully. I thought the condo was ours. And I got him flustered. I got him blinking his eyes and his hands up in there and stuff and stuttering. And I pat him down, see he doesn't have a gun. So I just relax. Just time to see 15 more Koreans come through the door and one white person. And I'm like, this can't be good. So I go in the bedroom. I'm like, I think your fucking family's here. And she looks, and it is. And what he's done is, so from the time I went to prison in '93 to the time of the story in 2015, I had nothing to do with opiates. I never used opiates again. And but he had told her family around the country that the reason she was no longer in her relationship was because I was A, a heroin dealer, and B, I was abusive. So between the cycle of addiction and abuse, I have her trapped, right? And it's a shallow lie with no substance that it's going to be exposed immediately. But he didn't care, and he didn't care to the point where he flew 15 people from around the country up on his dime and hired an intervention specialist from Minnesota and flew her up here on his dime just to get her to do one thing, and she did it beautifully. She called the Seattle Police non-emergency line, and the Seattle Police show up, and the first thing they asked was if I stay there, or if I live there, and I said, no, I don't. I live in Everett, but I stay here a lot. I should have lied and said I lived there, because she says, well, I don't want my family here, and I'm on the lease. They said, family, you got to go. And he says, well, I'm still on the lease, and I don't want him here. So right in front of him, they say, look, we know it's chicken shit, but you got to go. So on my way out the door, I clown him, not knowing what a gangster he is, and I'm like, so one of you all want to escort me out, keep me safe? And I laugh right in his face, and they laugh right in his face, you know. And I leave, and I get in the elevator, and she calls me, and my girlfriend, and she says, hey, the police know that you don't have a driver's license, but they're going to let me drop the keys down to you because they don't like the maneuver he just pulled on the condo, and they agree with me that since his name's on the lease, and that he's probably going to go after the car next. And so they're going to let you drive it far enough away to where he can't find you, but don't continue driving, just park, wait for me. I was like, all right. So I go around to the front of the building, and it's we're on the second floor right above Queen Anne Avenue, so it's like a 3-foot drop from her hand to my hand, you know. She drops me the keys. I get in the parking garage, and I'm pulling the car out, and this kid in this older Mazda clips the Lexus, and I get out to look for it, and everywhere you're prone to hit on the Lexus, there's big clear plastic decals, so you don't scratch the paint, you just scratch the sticker, you know, peel it off, put a new one on. It didn't even scratch our decal, but it kind of messed the Mazda up. So I jump out, I'm like, here's my insurance information. I'm in a huge hurry, I gotta go. And my luck, he's all, actually, I'd feel more comfortable if we call the police. I'm like, oh my God, at least I know they don't gotta go far, right? And they're right upstairs. I said, all right, well, please hurry up. I'm gonna pull my car into a regular spot so people can get around us. Just please hurry. He was really one of dude's henchmen who called the dude who excused himself from talking to the police, rode the elevator down where his other two accomplices were in the stairwells. They came in, pulled me out of the Lexus, and I already told you the rest of the story.
That's when they pulled you out.
Yeah. And yes, it was a little fucking disconcerting. So after the kidnapping, it was like the honeymoon phase all over again with us. And but she was mentally deteriorating. The PTSD, she lost her mind so quickly it was terrifying to watch. She started chasing her dead grandmother's voice around in her car, and saying that the only reason I'm saying I don't hear it is because I'm trying to make her crazy. And she's breaking into my little tiny place and trying to steal my laptop and stuff, you know, and try to steal stuff from my roommate. And and she went back to her husband, went to jail for the first time in her life for domestic violence and stuff, and told on him for trying to bribe and coerce witnesses in a civil trial. And he couldn't get in trouble for it because a spouse shall not be compelled to testify against a spouse, you know.
But it didn't work out between you and her.
Correct. And
but I'm curious, Taco, what about your PTSD?
But yeah, my PTSD is through the roof.
And how are you dealing with that? How did you then? How are you now? It's like
marijuana. That was just thrown to me from the guy off camera. And
I thought it fell from the sky.
And but yeah, I've told this story so many times. I don't really know how to tell it in another order besides just to keep rolling, you know. And so the night of the kidnapping, they got caught immediately, you know. And all four of them gave matching confessions, and it was on video. It was on video because most of it was in that parking garage in the beginning. Right. And so he bailed all four of them out that night. Two of them for $250,000 a piece, and him and another guy for $350,000. And then him and the other $350,000 guys, their bails were revoked. And that guy's parents bailed him out for $500,000. And Scott, though, he waited for his bond hearing, and the judge upheld the $500,000 bail, so he bailed himself out for $500,000. And then all four gave matching confessions. It was on video. and 2 of them were willing to rat him out. And so I didn't cooperate. I never gave a statement or anything. And I didn't go to the first 2 sentencing because I didn't care about them. They told on their friend and their employer. You know, he hired people from his restaurants. And I went to his sentencing just to hear it. You know, me and my girlfriend went there. Oh yeah, so I went through like 6 rebound girls in the next 6 months, and then ended up dating for 6.5 years the girl who introduced me to the girl I got kidnapped over, my roommate Natalie. And me and Natalie went to the sentencing, and he gave an apology speech that had every single person in that courtroom, the families that were waiting for people to get sentenced afterwards, the King County Corrections Officer, the court clerk and stenographer, the prosecutor, everyone but me and the judge cried. My girlfriend cried even at his apology speech, but it was all to his family and his wife and his brothers and stuff. The only thing I got at the very end, he mumbled, "I'd also like to apologize to Mr. McMonigal," and that was all I got. And he had to plead guilty as he was originally charged to the high end of his range as a first-time offender, which is usually unheard of. And that was, he had to plead guilty to assault 2, robbery 1, kidnapping 1, which would give him 10 years with 10% off for good time, and would have to register as a sex offender for the rest of his life, because kidnapping is a sex offense in Washington State. And that's what the judge gave him. And then the next person to get sentenced was the Mexican kid, and he had his whole huge family there and stuff. And so I listened to that also, and I knew that nothing I said for or against him would affect the other 3. I could say they actually raped me, and it wouldn't change anything, because once you're sentenced, it's done, you know. And so I raised my hand and wanted to talk, and the judge said, "Absolutely, Mr. McMonigal." And I shocked the prosecutor and my girlfriend, because they both knew I wasn't going to cooperate in any way. And I said, "Hey man," he also had to plead guilty to the high end of his range, which his range is only 42 to 48 months, which means judge can't go lower than 42, can't go over 48. And they were in agreement that he'd get the 48. And I raised my hand and said, "Hey man, I just want to point out, this is only one of the 4 that didn't try to fix what he did wrong by doing further wrong. He didn't turn into a rat against his friend and employer. He didn't try to bribe or coerce witnesses in a civil trial. He's the only one that's holding his mud, accepting responsibility for what he did, and awaiting his fate. And for that, he's got to plead guilty as the high end of his range as a first-time offender. I don't think that's fair." And incidentally, he's the only one that showed me an ounce of compassion during the whole thing. And the judge knocked 3 months off out of the 6 she could have knocked off for what I said. And he started thanking me, and his family started thanking me, you know, which was kind of embarrassing. I was like, "I've failed." I tried to get the whole 6 months knocked off for him. And the reason I did that was because I didn't really have a problem with the other 3. I ended up with a problem with the 2 that told on their friend because they turned into rats. But ultimately, I didn't have a problem with them, because when they saw me, they hated my guts. They were putting guns in my mouth and saying, "I wanted to kill you from the first second I laid eyes on you, you piece of shit." Sure, they were getting paid monetarily, but he had also convinced them that I was a complete piece of shit, and that they were doing the world a service by removing me. You know what I mean? And I myself can definitely relate to that feeling, you know. And so I didn't really have a problem with that. And yeah, and that's back to the saying I could have won that fight in the parking garage. That the reason I said I could have won that is because I wasn't fighting for my life. I didn't think they were going to kill me. I thought they're going to rough me up, stay away from the girl type of thing, you know. So I was just fighting to get away, because I was thinking, I just got out of prison for killing somebody. I'm in a millionaire's car in a millionaire's parking garage. If I hurt one of these people, especially with one of their weapons, they're going to put me under the prison. You know what I mean? So I was just fighting to get away. I'd fight them, run towards the exit, fight them, run towards the exit, and so forth. It wasn't until I was being zip-tied that I thought, oh shit, I should have reconsidered this, you know? Yeah. And so after the sentencing and everything goes by, so me and my girlfriend, my 2 stepbrothers I lost that little apartment I had through Pioneer Housing a year and a half after I got out of prison, and I lost it for a drug relapse. And I moved into this mother-in-law apartment. Underneath my mom and stepdad's house. And my stepfather, my mom just started, she met him 6 months before I got out of prison and stuff, and didn't marry him until 3 years after I got out. When I first moved in there, they weren't even married yet. But we lived in this giant mother-in-law apartment downstairs. And my stepfather was the lead engineer on the team that develops the wing for all the big jets at Boeing. And he was 67, and he was trying to sneak through the cracks until he got to 70, because you get your next big boost in Social Security and pension. And Boeing, you might have odds to do it. And we knew that was fairly unlikely, but chances were. But we all knew that when the day he got laid off or retired, we would have 30 days to get the hell out of the house, because they'd want to remodel it, put it on the market, and they wanted to move to PL down in southwestern Washington. And so about a year and a half after the kidnapping, I break all the 5 metatarsals on the top of my right foot. And then the next day, the prosecutor starts calling me from all these different phone numbers trying to get me to cooperate. So I keep realizing it's him and I hang up, you know. And then the next day, I break all the metatarsals on my left foot.
Well, how are you doing this, Taco? Why is this happening?
Because I'm dumb. Both times I was jumping off something too high and landing on my feet. And the second one was really dumb because I already hurt the right foot, you know. And so I'm going to catch myself on one foot. And so walking was difficult to say the least. And the same day that I break the metatarsals in my left foot, I'm in the mother-in-law apartment with my girlfriend, and I forget what we were watching on TV, but it was hilarious, and we're having a great time. It was one of the happiest times I can remember in recent history, and laughing my ass off. And my mom comes to the top of the stairs and says, "Christopher, I need to talk to you." And so I come up and she says something to me, and I'm like, "Okay," and I'm still smiling, laughing, but she just stays there at the top of the stairs. I'm like, "What did she say?" I'm like, I realized I couldn't really realize what she said, even though she said it clearly to me. I said, "What? I didn't hear you. I'm sorry. Can you say it again?" And she says it again. I'm like, "I still just can't hear you." And I had to actually walk up the stairs physically, and I said, "No, tell me what you said." And she says it again, and I was still baffled. And I'm like, "Can you please tell me one more time?" And she says it again, and I was just struck numb. It's the same day I break the metatarsal in my foot, and my stepdad got laid off, so we knew we had 30 days to get out and stuff. And what she had said was that my oldest daughter, Lily, had just called her and trying to get a hold of me. And my father-in-law, him and my mother-in-law, who had been together 49 years, neither one of them drank, drug, or swore. He had lost his mind, and he shot my 20-year-old daughter in the head, my mother-in-law in the head, and himself in the head, while my 10-year-old and my wife barely made it out of the house alive. And so I called my daughter and asked her what happened, and they said they didn't know why he'd lost his mind at the time. And turns out, after the autopsy, they said it was his insulin that made him lose his mind. And she said that my 10-year-old had woken up my wife and said there's screaming in the other room, which was uncharacteristic. So of them. So my wife gets up and opens up her parents' bedroom door, and Terry, my father-in-law, had a gun to Brenda, my mother-in-law's head, and said, "I'm gonna fucking kill her, I'm gonna fucking shoot her." And he typically didn't swear, you know. And their names are Terry, Joe, and Brenda Sue of Tyler, Texas, for fuck's sake. I mean, you can't get much more American Bible Belt than that, you know. And he said, "I'm gonna fucking kill her, I'm gonna fucking shoot her, but if you come and sit in that chair right there and be real quiet, I won't kill anybody, I'll let everybody live." And she knew that was not the reasoning, it was sound mind, so she screamed at Chloe, my 10-year-old, go, get across the street, go to the neighbors, you know, go. And this is in a little town of Van, Texas, where the neighbors are few and far between. And she heard the front door open and close, so she knew she was safe. And so she ran to Fawn's room, our 20-year-old, and said, "Fawn, we got to go. He's lost his mind. He's going to kill everybody." And they argued back and forth, but this was unheard of. So Fawn ultimately said, "I'm not going anywhere. He's not going to do anything," you know. And so my wife went to run out in the front yard to go get to Chloe, and she didn't make it to the mailboxes before she heard 3 separate gunshots. And he'd killed my daughter, my mother-in-law, and himself. And while my daughter was relaying the story to me, I could just hear my wife rocking back and forth in the background saying, "I thought I knew pain, I thought I knew pain, I thought I knew pain." And yes, that's been...
Man, I got 2 daughters, and that's like a parent's absolute worst nightmare, is to lose a kid. I'm sorry, man. That... Yeah, I can't like fathom or imagine losing one of my girls.
Yeah, and since then, I really just haven't. There's no agency or anything that's gonna help with that shit. You know what I mean? Like fucking. I really lost the ability to. Hey, Alvin, could you maybe not make so much noise right now? Could you? Thank you. And yeah, I lost the ability to function. Like I can carry on a conversation or whatever, you know, but just barely. Like I have a tough time focusing on what people are telling me. You know, I used to have a tremendous memory, and now my short-term memory is just shot all to hell. And yeah, I certainly lost the ability to work, you know. And I went into prison at such a young age that I tried to apply for Social Security, but I keep getting denied for no work credits, not enough work credits. And I don't even know what work credits are. And yeah, so I mean, without an income, you just kind of float adrift, you know what I mean, out here. And I've tried to get into tiny homes. I cannot ever get the right referral from the right person. Like, no, there's nowhere to go. You know what I mean? There's absolutely nowhere to go. And now I've got cancer. I've got 2 types of cancer, so I just lost the ability to walk. And I'm not really sure why. Like, so I started, me and Natalie broke up, and I got diagnosed with cancer like 9 months later, colorectal cancer, and they took 3 feet of my intestines, hoping that was gonna, they call it a salvage, you know, and they're hoping that would get rid of it. And it didn't. And then they found out I had Hodgkin's lymphoma also. And I knew I didn't want to do radiation, so they set me up with immunotherapy, which is they take your good cells, mix them with stem cells, and put them back in your body, which is still a violent process to your body. Your body doesn't like it at all, but it's a lot better than radiation, you know. And but being faced with my mortality and stuff, it was terrifying, especially going there alone and stuff, you know. And so I skipped a bunch of treatments and whatnot, and they hadn't said anything about my drug use or anything at the time. And then after I skipped treatments, they thought I wasn't taking it seriously enough, and so they told me they wouldn't treat me until I quit smoking. And I kept trying to quit smoking. You'd think it'd be a breeze to quit smoking when you're faced with life or death, you know what I mean? But it's not a breeze, and I couldn't quit. And so then I ended up getting an infection in my legs, and I went to Northwest Hospital, that's ran by the UW now, and Fred Hutch is there now, and they automatically give me a referral to Fred Hutchinson. So I'm still technically going and getting my treatments there. But it's been 3 years since I had cancer, and again, I had rides to get there for a few weeks, and then my ride lost its vehicle, and so I haven't been going there either. And so I'm not even really sure why I lost the ability to walk. My legs are swollen, and I can't straighten out my legs, and so I can only go 10 to 15 feet before I just don't have the strength or the endurance to make it any further. And yeah, so basically I feel my health deteriorating. I can see I'm pale in the mirror and stuff. A few weeks ago I was so jaundiced that the inside of my mouth was yellow, and I can't walk, and I'm still just too scared to death to go to the hospital because I've got my dog, and it's heavy. I'm staying on couch of a friend's RV, and I have very little belongings, but it's still too much to have in an RV, you know what I mean? And I just basically feel like a burden every day, and I can't tell you how hard it is just to find some place to go to the bathroom or to take a shower or any of that, like when you can't walk. And yeah, life's just it's a terrifying ordeal right now. It's not even a blessing right now. It's just a terrible thing I'm fighting with every day.
Yeah, that's the word that came to mind. That sounds terrifying.
Yeah, I certainly don't want to die, but sitting idle is only going to make my worst fears come true. You know what I mean? Like, it's only going to make death more inevitable than it already is. But yeah, there's got to be an answer there. I'll just be damned if I know what it is.
Yeah, man, I'm sorry. I don't know what the answer is. I was telling somebody this the other day, or just earlier today, that there's always this piece of like, you're not the first person in this position. There's other people that have been in this position. And what have they done? And how do we find out what they've done? And let's figure that out.
Exactly.
You know? And I don't know what those answers are, but there are answers. But yeah, man, I'm sorry. I mean,
that's my story in a nutshell, basically.
yeah, man. That's a lot of trauma.
Oh yeah, and in prison, especially in California, just some of the things I had to do just to earn the right to hang out with the cool kids and not get butt fucked to death somewhere. There was some pretty traumatic things that were done there too, you know, and just all in the name of fitting in. And I thought I made peace with all the things I had to do in prison to survive, because if you don't do that, then you're gonna get killed, you know, so I thought I'd made peace with it and compartmentalized it just fine. I didn't even think I needed to compartmentalize it because it was a matter of life or death, you know what I mean? Like, if you don't do this, we're going to kill you, you know?
Yeah.
And but the further away I get from those events, the more they come back to haunt me, you know what I mean?
Yeah, man, there's a book, which I don't know if you've heard, Body Keeps the Score, is where that trauma it's in you, man.
And
It's in you.
The whole reason I do drugs is because I need to fall asleep instead of go to sleep. There's no more laying in bed and staring at the ceiling and going to sleep. That's not going to end well.
Yeah, the medicate.
And so I do drugs, so eventually right in the middle of doing whatever I'm doing, I'm just out. You know what I mean? I don't have to lay there and ponder the day's fucking failures and successes before I go to sleep, you know?
Yeah.
Because I sleep with ghosts.
Taco, is there anything that you would want people of Seattle to know?
Yeah, man. As far as the homeless population goes, like, I understand why people are fed up with us. It appears that we have a complete lack of respect for everything around us. You know, like, people see us and they cringe because a large amount of us do nothing but talk shit, break in their mailboxes, their cars, shit in their property, throw their syringes down, talk shit when their kids are walking by. Like I get it. It disgusts me also, you know. And but not all of us are bad, man. And I do my best to curb that type of behavior when I see it. And and instead of just getting disgusted with us, just to have faith. Not all of us are trying to stay the course and remain a scumbag, you know. And some of us, like, don't feel like we have an option. You know, we don't have any other option, and it may not be right, but they're just angry at the world. They're not. You know what I mean? We all feel the same way. We're just looking at it from different points of view. You know.
Man, it's good to hear your voice. I'm glad that you told your story. It's important, and, you know, has value and worth, and yeah, thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you. I think.
No, man, it's like, you know, we all have our day that's gonna come. We're all, you know, and what
Exactly.
are we, you know, it's like we got to face that, and what are we going to leave behind?
I've for the last couple of years, I'd been flying a sign here and there to get money, you know, like, basically I'd need help with dog food or whatever, you know, and so I just put dog food in the sign, and people would help me out quite a bit, and that's almost non-existent now. Now almost no one will help you at all, and now typically if I fly a sign, or it used to happen like once a week where somebody yells something crass at me. Now it'll happen like 30, 40 times a day where somebody yells something.
You notice a shift.
Oh yeah. And
yeah, well, I mean, the wealth gap is it's not coming together. It's
Exactly.
going, so. All right, man. I'm gonna grab that little mic and grab a couple photos.